She's not allowed to touch the will, Maya whispered. Marcus Bennett froze mid-step, the polished oak floor creaking beneath his feet. For a second, he wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. His hand was still clutching the handle of his leather briefcase, and his mind was already halfway to the board meeting he was about to attend. He turned slowly. "What did you just say?" His voice was sharper than he'd intended. Maya was standing there in her socks and an oversized school sweatshirt, barely reaching the brass doorknob behind her. Her curls were still mussed from sleep, her dark eyes wide but unwavering. "I saw her," she said. "Miss Sabrina. She opened your safe. She took a picture of the will." Marcus blinked. "What are you even talking about, Maya?" The name came out more like a sigh than a question. He ran a hand through his graying hair, irritated, impatient. "You shouldn't say things like that." "But I saw her," Maya insisted. "She was in the office last night when I went down for cereal." "Maya, stop!" His voice rose. "That's enough. This is not a game." The girl recoiled, startled. Marcus had never yelled at her before. Not like this. The silence that followed was thick and awkward. Maya's bottom lip trembled for a second, but she didn't cry. "I'm not lying," she said quietly. Marcus clenched his jaw. "Sabrina did everything she could to take care of this family. She was here for both of us. She helps me. She helps you." "She doesn't love me," Mia interrupted. "And she tries," Marcus said, louder than before. "And maybe you should too." For a long moment, Maya just looked at him. Then she muttered something under her breath. "What was that?" he asked sharply, turning back to her. She looked up, her voice barely audible. "I said, I try, Daddy." The word hit him like a fist. Daddy. She'd never called him that before. Not once. In the 2 years since he'd married her mother, even after Clara's funeral, when the house had sunk into a quiet, painful stillness. She'd always called him Marcus, politely, distantly, as if she were keeping her heart locked behind a door she wasn't ready to open. And now that he had just yelled at her, accused her of lying, she called him Daddy. He stood frozen, watching the little girl walk away slowly, her small shoulders rising and falling with silent breathing. Something inside him broke. Later that night, after Sabrina had gone out for her evening sound bath, Marcus found himself standing alone in the study. The house was dark except for a brass lamp that cast a warm beam of light on the table. He stared at the safe. He hated himself for doing this. He opened it. The will was still there, still sealed, but something was wrong. The envelope felt stiffer than he remembered, newer. The paper inside. Was it glossier? He couldn't be sure. He set the document aside and sat up, rubbing his temples. A nagging voice echoed in the back of his mind. Clara's voice. "Signatures and documents are sacred things, Marcus. Promise me that if anything happens to me, don't let your grief blind you." He had promised and then broken it. When Sabrina returned an hour later, glowing with the effortless beauty she wore like perfume, she leaned in to kiss him. He kissed her back. He smiled, but something was wrong. And for the first time, he looked at her not as a partner, but as an enigma. He noticed how she immediately went into the office to clean up, how she closed the door behind her, how she suddenly became preoccupied with the financial statements on his desk, how she started asking way too many questions about his estate, especially since he had started talking about setting up a trust for Maya. He poured himself a drink and sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames. That one word, Daddy, still echoed in his chest. Maybe Mia wasn't lying. Maybe she had finally decided to trust him, and he had almost thrown it away. And maybe, just maybe, the person he had been interrogating all this time wasn't a little girl with everything to lose. This was a woman who walked in with a smile and suddenly was everywhere she shouldn't have been. And just like that, one word shattered the man's confidence. Dad. Not a title. It was a request. A quiet act of courage from a little girl who had watched more than anyone could imagine. Before we go any further, tell me where in the world you're watching this from? The next morning, Marcus sat alone in the sunny room, holding a cup of black coffee that had long since gone cold. The newspaper lay untouched next to him. Outside the tall windows, the Georgia sky was soft with spring haze, and birds fluttered from branch to branch as if nothing were wrong. But something was wrong, and the uneasy silence in the house only made it worse. He had barely slept. Maya's words still echoed, "Don't let her touch the will." And then that fragile, unexpected whisper. "I'm trying, Dad." He pinched the bridge of his nose. He'd brushed it off yesterday. He'd yelled at her. But the way she looked at him, he couldn't shake it. Not her voice, not her confidence, and certainly not her eyes. Those were Clara's eyes, wide and stubborn and frighteningly wise. "Morning," Sabrina chirped, walking into the sunny room barefoot, her hair wrapped in a silk scarf, her robe pulled tight. She leaned over and kissed his cheek. "You didn't come to bed with me last night." "I've been thinking about something." "Oh," she asked, sitting down in the chair across from him. She poured herself a cup of tea from the flowered teapot she'd set out earlier, stirring it with slow, practiced movements. "Work or Maya?" Marcus forced a smile. "Both." Sabrina offered a sympathetic little sigh. "She still has those dreams, huh?" Marcus said nothing. He was looking at her over the rim of his cup, the way she cocked her head, as if feigning concern, the way she didn't ask what Maya had said, just assumed, or rather hoped, that he'd brush it off, and until recently he would have. "Actually," he said carefully, calmly, "she said something strange last night." "Oh." "She said she saw you in the office." Sabrina blinked. "When?" "Last night around midnight." She'd said a second had passed. "Enough." "Then she must have been dreaming again," Sabrina said. "You know how vivid children's imaginations are, especially after everything that's happened." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but she was awfully specific." Sabrina's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Marcus, are you seriously suggesting that I sneak into your office in the middle of the night to—" "What? Read your paperwork? You've been asking a lot of questions lately." She laughed softly, cheerfully, but a little too quickly. "I live here. I care about our lives. I'm not going to apologize for wanting to understand how things work." Marcus nodded slowly. "Fair enough." Sabrina leaned forward, her tone honeyed. "Look, I know Maya's still adjusting, and I know she misses Clara. Of course she does. But I always wanted to be a good example, Marcus. I was just support." He met her gaze and smiled. "That's why I trust you." She relaxed visibly, leaning back with a sigh of relief. He apologized a moment later, but the knot in his chest only tightened. Her responses were practiced, too practiced. She was always calm, always upset enough, worried enough, but something seemed rehearsed now, like a performance with memorized moments. He went to the office, closed the door. The safe was under the cabinet, unnoticed. He opened it again, took out the will. He hadn't shown it to anyone for months. He knew every page, but something was wrong. He looked more closely, then opened the bottom drawer of Clara's old filing cabinet. That's when he saw it. The original version, and an earlier draft of the will. Handwritten, still stapled to the corner, the final paragraph of which didn't match the version inside the safe. The wording was similar, but this one had Maya as the sole heir. The one in the safe had split control between Maya and his future wife. He sat down heavily. Clara would never have added that phrase, never. Especially not after they'd discussed protecting Maya no matter what. He flipped through the two documents again, side by side. The fonts, the spacing, everything was immaculate, professional. But now that he knew what to look for, the differences became more pronounced. And suddenly he understood. This wasn't Mia's imagination. It was a warning. He'd picked Maya up from school himself that night. She'd been surprised. Usually she had a driver come home. But today he'd canceled all his appointments and waited in line for rides like any other dad. She barely spoke as she climbed into the back seat. "Are you hungry?" he asked as they pulled away. She shrugged. "I was thinking tacos." She glanced at him, uncertain. "Just us?" He nodded. "Just us." They sat in the corner of a booth at a quiet local cafe. He took his time, let her sip lemonade, watched the cook flip tortillas behind a glass grill. "Listen," he said softly, "I owe you an apology." Maya looked up. "I didn't believe you last night, and I should have." Her eyes didn't move. "I looked at the will, Maya. I compared it to the original draft. Someone changed it. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Finally, she whispered. So you believe me now? I do. Her lips pressed together and her eyes glittered. She looked away quickly, as if she didn't want him to see, but Marcus saw it anyway. You were very brave to tell me, he added. She nodded. I didn't mean to, but I promised Mum. He froze. You promised her. Before she died, she told me to watch the safe. She said, if anything happens to me, I need to make sure no one ever touches your will. She said, grief makes a person blind. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. Mia reached into her small backpack and pulled out a worn notebook. Clara's diary, the one she used to read aloud before bed. She wrote about it. Mom said, it's here. See? He carefully picked up the notebook, and there it was, in Clara's handwriting, dated a few weeks before her accident. If anything happens to me, and someone new comes into the house too quickly, too easily, check the papers. Maya will know. She sees what we adults miss. That evening, Marcus stood in the doorway of his office again, holding Clara's notebook in one hand and the amended will in the other. He looked down the hallway where Sabrina had just walked, laughing into her phone, laughing as if she didn't have a single worry in the world. But now he had one, and she had one too. She just didn't know it yet. 3 days passed. Marcus said nothing. He watched. He watched the way Sabrina would suddenly linger outside his office door when he wasn't there. The way she'd ask if he needed help organizing his paperwork. The way she'd casually mentioned how tense Maya had become lately. How distant, how difficult. She was still very worried, she'd said one day, stirring the honey in her tea. You know how kids can twist things when they feel threatened by someone new. Marcus nodded, smiled faintly, but inside he was cataloging every word. On the fourth morning, he'd called Louis Carter. Louis had been Clara's lawyer and friend for more than 2 decades, a widower in his 70s with a sharp mind and slow feet. He arrived at the Bennett estate just after lunch, stepping out of his Navy Lincoln with a battered leather briefcase and a heavy coat that didn't match the weather. Maya met him on the porch. Uncle Louis, she said quietly. His smile was immediate and warm. Your mother would be proud, young lady. He meant it. He had always had a soft spot for Clara's daughter, and he had no doubt she was telling the truth. But now that Marcus had seen the changes to the will with his own eyes, Louis had something tangible to handle. Inside, they laid the 2 versions side by side. Louis, squinting over his bifocals, studied the documents, down to the weight of the ink and the spacing between the letters. This paragraph, he said, tapping the page lightly. It's different. The kerning is slightly different. Same font, but the spacing is off. And look at this. The margins are off by 1/10 of an inch. You think this was printed over the original issue? Professionally recreated. It's a forgery, Marcus. Marcus sat back in his chair. The words no longer surprised him, but hearing them out loud reinforced his suspicions. And if it's a forgery, then someone is planning to steal a very large portion of your fortune. Marcus's jaw tightened. The clause gives 40% of my liquid assets to a future spouse, including Sabrina. Lewin nodded. And if this is filed as your last will and testament, she has the legal right to contest almost everything else, even Maya's share. They sat in silence for a moment. She doesn't know I noticed, Marcus said. Then don't let her know yet. Louis opened his briefcase and pulled out a small rectangular device. A voice recorder? Marcus raised an eyebrow. A high-sensitivity, court-admissible voice recorder. Maya wears this when she talks to Sabrina. If Sabrina says anything remotely coercive or incriminating, we'll have more than suspicion. We'll have evidence. Marcus tensed. I don't want her in danger. She'll be fine, Louis said calmly. We'll monitor this in real time. You and I will be in the next room. The moment something seems wrong, we'll intervene. Maya, who had been sitting quietly by the door with her knees pulled up to her chest, looked up. I can do it, she said. If Mom were here, she'd want me to do it. Marcus's throat tightened. He nodded once, his eyes bright, but said nothing. They made the arrangements that night. Sabrina thought she had won. Her tone was softer than ever, her eyes gentler. At dinner, she handed Marcus wine, touched his arm when she spoke of the inheritance, and praised Maya's new obedient behavior. "I think we've really turned a corner," she said, smiling at Maya like a cat pretending not to notice a mouse. The next day, Marcus told Sabrina he was thinking of updating his will. "Just to be responsible," he said with a shrug. "After all, if anything happens to me, I want to make sure you and Maya are protected." Sabrina's eyes glittered, but her voice remained calm. "Marcus, that's so thoughtful. I mean, sure, I never expected anything, but it's good to plan. Responsibly, as you said." He told her he had prepared a preliminary version. "You can look at it tonight if you want." That evening, they gave her a copy of the elaborate forgery Louis had created, with glaring financial discrepancies and fake assets. Foreign accounts that didn't exist, properties that had been sold years ago, business interests that were no longer active. Any normal person would have asked questions. Sabrina didn't. Instead, she fell silent, reading, turning the pages with a growing smile. "Those Cayman holdings," she murmured. "I thought you sold them years ago, but I think I misunderstood." Marcus's heart stopped. They had never discussed the Cayman accounts, not even briefly. In the other room, Louis tapped quietly on his tablet. The recording was crystal clear. Sabrina continued, almost speaking to herself. "And the Zurich accounts. Smart move. Frankly, separating them from your U.S. assets protects Maya's inheritance from tax complications. Very smart." Louis looked up. Marcus was looking at her. "You're very knowledgeable," Sabrina chuckled, putting the pages down. "You forget I'm listening when you talk, honey. You always discuss your finances on the phone." "That's funny," Marcus said, approaching, "because I haven't mentioned those accounts in almost 5 years, and certainly not in this house." She blinked once. Then her smile was back, cooler, thinner. "Well, maybe I was just guessing, based on the pattern," but her voice gave her away. The carefully crafted script had gone awry, and Marcus was not the man she had once deceived. Sabrina stood up, brushing invisible lint from her blouse. "Are you trying to imply something?" Maya, who had been curled up on the love seat with her favorite butterfly clip carefully pinned above her ear, right where the microphone was hidden, looked up and asked softly, "Miss Sabrina, is there anything you would like me to sign if Dad were ever hurt?" The room went silent. Sabrina turned slowly. "Why are you asking that?" "Because you told me the other day that you wanted to talk about Mom's jewelry in the house." Sabrina froze, then smiled. "Is that what you're asking?" "I was just saying it would be wise to draw up a deed of gift, something for the future. You know, in case you ever wanted to show gratitude, even if I didn't mean to," Maya asked softly. Sabrina tilted her head. "Well, kids don't always know what's best." Louis tapped his tablet again. "Check." The next word Sabrina said would seal her fate. "Darling," she said, walking toward Maya, "if you want to stay in this house, keep your pretty room, your books, your school. You'll learn that cooperation is everything. Life isn't fair, but it can be comfortable if you play by the rules." Maya's face didn't change, but her hand slid into her pocket and pressed a small button inside. A moment later, Marcus stood up, his voice ice cold. "Enough." Sabrina turned around. "Marcus, we heard everything." Louis stood up too, the recorder in his hand. "You were thorough, Miss Lauren, but not thorough enough." Sabrina's eyes darted from Marcus to Louis to Maya. For the first time, her mask cracked. "Little bitch," she hissed. "You have no idea what you just destroyed." And Maya looked her straight in the eyes, calm, unperturbed. "I saved what my mother promised to protect." Sirens echoed down the road. Sabrina's eyes widened. She turned toward the front door, but Marcus was already there, waiting, and this time he wasn't grieving. He was ready. Red and blue lights cut through the dusk like warning flares, painting the white columns of the Bennett estate with urgent pulses. 2 black SUVs pulled up behind the patrol car, tires crunching the gravel with ominous purpose. The moment the front door swung open, Sabrina froze in the doorway, her face drained of color. "Miss Sabrina Lauren?" the lead officer asked, stepping forward with calm authority. "We have a warrant for your arrest." "You are mistaken," she spat. Her voice, once sweet and measured, had turned into something sharp and furious. "This is a misunderstanding. I am a guest here." Marcus stood next to the officer, his arms crossed, his expression a stony mask. "No, you are a predator, and you have entered the wrong house." Sabrina tried to back away, but two agents from the Financial Crimes Unit blocked her path. "Madam, do not resist," one of them said. "We advise you to go quietly." "Marcus," she begged now, changing her voice again, using the softer tones that had once disarmed him. "You know me. I loved you. I cared about your daughter. You can't let them do this to me." But Marcus didn't flinch. He simply nodded at the officer and whispered, "Take her away." When the handcuffs snapped onto her wrists, Maya was standing at the top of the stairs, Clara's law journal clutched tightly in her hands. Her small frame was tense, but her eyes never wavered. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She watched. And in that moment, Marcus realized his daughter had crossed some invisible threshold. She wasn't just a little girl anymore. She was something stronger. The officers escorted Sabrina away while she screamed about lawyers and false accusations. But it was no use. It was all already recorded. The audio file had already been sent to the Federal Investigative Agency, and Louis had already sent the amended will and Clara's handwritten version to the State Attorney General's office. Less than an hour later, the house was quiet again. Louis sat in the study, sipping warm bourbon from the glass Clara usually kept on the same table. Marcus leaned against the mantel, his eyes fixed on a framed photograph of Clara. She was laughing, and the picture captured the moment, her arms wrapped around young Maya. She played it smart. Marcus muttered, "Too smart." Louis nodded. She had done this before. That was for sure. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Her real name was not Sabrina Lorne. It was Vanessa Ramirez. She had been on the fringes of several inheritance fraud investigations in California, Texas, and Florida. Different aliases, different targets, all of them grieving, all of them rich, and all of them alone. Marcus exhaled slowly. How did we not notice this before? Because she is beautiful, and because grief blinds you, Clara had said best. Maya appeared in the doorway, barefoot and in her pajamas, her hair framing her tired face in a soft halo of curls. "I couldn't sleep," she said simply. "Come here, baby," Marcus said, holding out his hand. She crossed the room and climbed into his lap without a word. Her body was pressed against his chest, and the way it had been when she was 5. And as he held her, he could feel her heartbeat calm against his. "You were so brave," he whispered into her hair. "She tried to get me to sign something," Maya said, her voice almost inaudible. Marcus looked at her sharply. "When?" "2 days ago. A paper. She said it was a thank you gift, but I saw the title. It said, 'Agreement for Future Transfer of Property.'" Marcus's fist clenched. "And you didn't tell me. I was scared. I thought maybe you wouldn't believe me." The pain in his chest deepened. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have listened sooner, but I didn't sign it." Maya pulled away. "I told her Mom said I wasn't allowed to sign anything I didn't understand. Then she got really angry. Said I was ungrateful, said, 'I'm sending you to boarding school.'" Louis's face darkened. "We'll make sure that detail is included in the charges." What's going to happen to her?" Maya asked. Marcus looked at Louis Kaz. "She's going to stand trial," Louis said. "And with the evidence we have, she'll be held accountable not only for fraud, but for attempted coercion of a minor. She'll never hurt another family again." That night, Marcus sat by Mia's bed until she fell asleep. He watched her eyelids flutter, her hand still clutching Clara's diary like a shield. When he finally got up to leave, he paused and whispered, "We kept her promise, dear." H. He turned off the light and quietly closed the door behind him. The next week was a blur of police interviews, legal advice, and media inquiries. News of the arrest had spread faster than anyone expected. But Louis, ever protective, had managed to protect Maya's identity from the press. "This story wasn't about scandal," he told one reporter. "It was about a kid who did the right thing when no one else would look." Marcus spent hours going over his financial records, making sure nothing else had been compromised. Every invoice, every document was double-checked. Sabrina was accurate, but not perfect. She hadn't filed anything legally binding yet. Her timing was off by several days. It could have been much worse. The biggest surprise came the following Friday. Marcus received a letter, posted anonymously, with no return address. Inside was a simple note, typed on elephant paper. She'd done this before. "You're not alone. Thank your daughter for stopping her." Also enclosed were photocopies of other wills from 3 states, with matching clause insertions, similar fonts, and identical spacing inconsistencies. Marcus handed the envelope to Louis, who took it straight to the authorities. "I have a feeling," Louis said, "we're not the only ones this little girl just saved." That night, the house was quiet for the first time in months. Maya sat by the fireplace, leafing through her mother's journal. Marcus poured them both mugs of cocoa and sat on the rug next to her. "Daddy," she said, trying the word again. He turned to face her. "I want to be like Mom. I want to help people who are being lied to, people who don't see it yet." He smiled, his eyes stinging again. "You already are, Maya." And somewhere in the quiet warmth of the firelight, in the echo of everything they had been through, Marcus knew they had faced darkness. Yes, but they had come through it with something more powerful than relief. They had come through it with purpose. 3 weeks later, the house no longer rang with anxiety. The smell of fresh paint wafted around the study, where Marcus had converted the room into what he now called Maya's library. Her mother's law books were neatly arranged on the shelves. Alongside the new volumes, Marcus had ordered a primer on the law, books on fraud prevention, and stories of young heroes who stood up for what was right. In the center of it all was Mia's small desk, salvaged from Clara's old law office, now perfect for an 8-year-old with overly big dreams. Mia sat there now, quietly leafing through a book called Children's Rights in Modern Law, her fingers sliding under each word. She wasn't reading for school anymore. She was reading because she wanted to understand, to be prepared. "Daddy," she said without looking up, "why do some people smile when they're planning something bad?" Marcus paused where he stood, stacking papers nearby. "Because they think they've already won," he said. Maya nodded slowly. Sabrina smiled a lot. "She did," he admitted. She looked up. "But I smiled too. And I mean it." "I know," Marcus said softly. "That's how I know you're different." That day, Louis came in with news. "I talked to the U.S. District Attorney's Office," he said, settling into a kitchen chair. "They're bringing federal charges, not just fraud, conspiracy, multiple counts. It's going to trial." Marcus looked up from his coffee. "Will Mia have to testify?" "Maybe," Louis said. "While they hope the tapes and the forged will be enough, they've asked for something else Mia can give without having to sit in the courtroom." Maya appeared in the doorway, holding her notebook. "The victim impact statement?" Louis smiled. "You've been reading again, haven't you?" She nodded. "I want to help the other kids, the ones Sabrina hurt before me." "We'd like you to write something for sentencing," Louis said softly. "A letter from the heart. It would be read in court." That night, Marcus sat across from Maya at the kitchen table while she wrote and erased and rewrote. The lamp shone above them, casting a halo of golden light around her journal. Clara would have loved this scene, he thought. Their daughter so brave, so determined, writing her truth. It had taken 2 hours, 3 crumpled drafts, and a 4th cup of cocoa. But when Maya was finished, she handed it to Marcus without saying anything. He read it silently, his heart swelling with pride, to the judge. "My name is Maya Williams, and I am 8 years old. I used to think adults always knew when someone was lying, but now I know that sometimes children notice things first. Miss Sabrina said she was helping us, but really she was trying to take away my mother's promises. She scared me and tried to make me sign a paper I didn't understand. But I remembered what my mother told me. Never sign anything just to make someone happy, especially if it doesn't feel right. Now I want to help other kids like me, because no one should be afraid in their own home, and no one should lose what a loved one left behind. I hope this letter helps you understand what she did and why it's important. Maya." Marcus folded the letter slowly and kissed the top of her head. "Your mother would be proud of you. I know I am." The following week, Marcus and Maya sat quietly in the courtroom. They were at the prosecution table, where Agent Lynn from the FBI nodded hello to them. Louis was there too, wearing his most formal tie, navy blue with thin gold stripes. Mia held his hand tightly. As the judge read Mia's letter aloud, the courtroom fell silent. Even the defense attorney stopped writing. Several people in the courtroom wiped away tears. In contrast, Sabrina, in a beige jumpsuit and handcuffs, did not look up. For the first time, there was no expression on her face, no smile, no measured tilt of her head, just a blank stare at the floor. The judge's voice was clear, firm, and respectful. Ms. Williams, this court thanks you for your courage, your clarity, and your commitment to justice. What you have shared here today will help protect others. Your words matter. Outside, as the trial ended and the media barricades formed, Marcus hugged Maya. They quietly got into Louis's car and drove away from the courthouse. The windows up, the world shut out. That evening, Maya sat in her library again. She didn't pick up a book. Instead, she opened a blank journal. On the first page, she wrote, "My job is to keep the promises my mother made, even when she's not here to keep them." Marcus peered out of the hallway, watching her silently. She looked up and smiled. "I want to start a group for kids who need to learn about their rights," and he walked in. "What kind of group?" "A club. We meet once a month. We read books like moms do, and we talk about saying no when something doesn't feel right, and maybe how to tell the difference between the people who are helping and the ones who are trying to take." He nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "We will do this." And they did. Toward the end of that spring, the Promise Club held its first meeting in a study-turned library. 5 children showed up, all connected to other families hurt by Sabrina's scam. They sat cross-legged on the rugs, each holding a gift book, listening as Maya read aloud the chapter Clara had once starred. Marcus watched from the doorway, his heart beating steadily for the first time in what felt like forever. The woman he loved was gone, but her voice lived on. The faint, fearless whisper of their daughter. The same whisper that had once said, "Don't let her touch the will." And now it said something even louder. "Let's protect every promise." That summer came quietly to Atlanta. The heat was blanketing the city. The days were getting longer, slower, softer. But inside the Williams home, something new was blooming, something more lasting than the seasons or the sunlight. It was purpose. Maya's Promise Club was growing faster than anyone expected. What had started with 5 kids now had nearly 30 names on the waiting list. Word was spreading to community centers, churches, and teachers whispering, "This is the girl who helped rewrite her father's will and expose the fraud." Parents, once wary, were now calling Marcus with hope. Some were even asking if they could volunteer. Marcus was busier than ever, not with board meetings or acquisition negotiations, but coordinating snacks, printing handouts, and vetting every volunteer who walked into their home. "Background checks," he'd say dryly when Louis raised an eyebrow. "If I was going to open the doors to kids again, there wouldn't be a shadow I wouldn't check." Every Wednesday afternoon, the office would fill with children's voices. Maya would lead the discussions by reading books aloud, then asking questions that made even the adults think. What did it mean to feel safe? How do you know when someone is telling the truth? Why do some adults act like they own your story? The kids would answer, first timidly, then boldly. One afternoon, after Maya finished reading a passage about the importance of guardianship, a little boy raised his hand. His name was Jeremiah, and he had been quiet for 3 meetings. "My mom signed something," he said. "Then this man came to our house and took our car, said we gave it to him." Marcus, who had been sitting quietly by the door, leaned forward. "Did your mom know what she was signing?" Maya asked softly. Jeremiah shrugged. "She cried a lot afterward. She said she never would have done it if she had known." Maya reached into her backpack and handed him a small laminated card. "It's a checklist," she said. "My mom made it and my dad updated it. Every time someone asks you to sign something, you show them this first, and if they get mad, you walk away." Marcus swallowed. It was the first time she'd said daddy in public. After the kids left, Louis came in. He stood by the window watching the sun set over the backyard, where Maya and Jeremiah were now drawing with crayons. "She doesn't just teach," Louis said. "She heals." "I think," Marcus said slowly, "she leads." There was silence between them. "You're still not going back to work?" Lewis asked. Marcus shook his head. "No boardrooms, no jets, no press conferences. Not yet." Lewis bowed his head. "You're a billionaire, Marcus. You could build empires." "I am," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Just not out of glass and steel." That night, Marcus sat in his room, staring at the old wooden box he hadn't opened in over a year. Clara's journals, her writings part legal, part lyrical, always amazed him. He opened one and turned to a page marked in her thick ink. "Our daughter's voice will be her armor." He ran his fingers over the ink. In the weeks that followed, Marcus took Maya on long walks. They visited Clara's favorite places, the botanical garden, the used bookstore on Pont, the lookout over the Chattahoochee River. One morning, sitting under the rustling trees, Maya asked, "Do you think Mother knows what we're doing?" Marcus stared at the sky for a long moment. "I don't know what I believe about heaven," he said, "but I believe she hears you every time you tell the truth." Maya smiled, her face turned toward the wind. "Then I want her to hear this. I'm not afraid anymore." And he knew she meant it. One Saturday, a letter arrived. The return address was from a correctional facility in South Georgia. Marcus opened it in the kitchen. Maya was sitting next to him, peeling oranges. It was from Sabrina. The handwriting was too neat, too precise. "Marcus, I've had more time to think than I'd like. I'm not sorry. I just wanted you to know what I did. It started with fear. I was afraid of losing what little power I had left. But I took something that wasn't mine, and I tried to take Maya's future too. She was the bravest person in that house. I know I'll never see the outside world again. But if you ever talk about me, I hope it's not as a monster, but simply as someone who was lost and didn't know how to ask for help. Tell her, thanks for stopping me." Marcus folded the letter slowly, then wordlessly tossed it into the trash. Maya looked up. "Was that from her?" He nodded. "Did she apologize?" "She tried." "That's good enough for me," Maya said, "but I don't need to read it." Later that day, Maya asked if she could hold the next club meeting outside. The sun was high, the yard green and wide. She wrote another lesson, this one about the difference between fear and guilt. As the children gathered under the elm tree, Maya stood up straight, clipboard in hand, and spoke clearly. "Sometimes," she began, "people try to scare you because they think it gives them power. But if you ask the right questions and tell the truth, they will lose it, because fear only works in silence." Marcus sat in a nearby lawn chair, listening, his arms folded across his chest, pride bulging silently in his ribs. Maya finished her speech, and one by one the children raised their hands. They shared stories, asked questions, and began to imagine a world where knowing your rights was as natural as tying your shoelaces. As the sun sank lower and the sky turned amber, Maya walked over to Marcus. "I want to write a book," she said. He blinked. "You're 8. "I know," she chuckled, "but kids my age need to know what to do. I want to write it for them." He smiled, his voice tight. "Then let's write it together." And they did. But on the cover, in big letters, was Maya's name, just as her mother had once dreamed. The following spring, something extraordinary happened. Maya's book, Speak Up Even When You're Little, caught the attention of a local TV host who had heard about the Promise Club from a teacher in the community. What began as a 5-minute spot about people turned into a viral video and then into a whirlwind of events. By the time the national morning show came calling, Marcus was fielding emails from publishers, nonprofits, and educators asking for collaboration. But Maya had one question. Will this help more kids talk? When the producers said yes, she agreed to appear on air. The morning of the interview, Marcus stood behind the camera crew while Maya sat on a stool, her feet dangling off the floor. The lights were bright. The host was kind. But the first question, "How did you know to say something about the will?" still left Maya scratching her head. She looked at her father. He nodded gently. "I just listened to my stomach," Maya said. It all clenched when she smiled like that. "I didn't know what it meant, but I didn't like it, so I said something." The host smiled. "And then what happened?" "I think I helped my dad remember who he is." That answer broke the internet. Overnight, Maya became a voice for children's legal awareness. But Marcus was careful. He turned down every offer that didn't fit with Clara's original vision. He turned down 2 reality TV offers, 3 book deals that required more drama, and a speaking engagement. She's 8, he kept reminding people. She's not a brand. But that didn't stop the movement. Nonprofits in Washington and California reached out to adapt Maya's checklist. A Georgia state senator even proposed Maya's Law, a bill that would require a certified guardian attorney to be included on all legal documents signed on behalf of minors. Marcus met her in person, and after a long conversation, he agreed to back it publicly. At the press conference, Maya stood on a small stand behind the podium. The microphones were taller than she was. "Kids don't always know the words," she said clearly, "but we know when something is wrong. This bill helps adults listen when we speak." The bill passed the House with bipartisan support. That evening at home, Marcus grilled a chicken on the patio while Maya ran barefoot across the lawn. Louis was there, leaning against the railing with a glass of lemonade. "Did you ever think your life would be like this?" Louis asked. Marcus looked at him. "Not in a million years." "Do you miss it?" Louis pressed. "The old life, the boardrooms, the deals." Marcus thought for a long time. "I miss the clarity. There are rules in business, but this is parenthood, community, rebuilding trust. It's all work of the heart, more messy but deeper." Louis clinked their glasses. "To messy, to deep," Marcus replied. That night, as Maya lay in bed, she called him. "Daddy," she whispered, "can we talk about Mom?" Marcus sat on the edge of her bed. "Of course. Do you think she would like what we do?" He smiled. "She dreamed of this before we did." Maya rolled over. "I remember her voice, soft, like when you read me stories. But when she was angry, it was quiet, not loud." "It's true," Marcus chuckled. Her silence was sharper than a scream. Maya's voice dropped. "Do you think she knew Sabrina was bad?" Marcus didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I think your mother saw through more people than I ever could. But sometimes knowing something and being willing to do something aren't the same thing. I was like you, when I knew but couldn't find the words yet." He leaned over and kissed her forehead. "Exactly." She was asleep before he reached the door. In the weeks that followed, Marcus and Maya visited other cities. Quiet trips, not showy. They spoke at schools, met with advocacy groups, and helped train volunteer caregivers. Marcus handled logistics. Maya led the conversations. Every child she met left with a laminated checklist and a sense that someone believed them. Then one night in a Detroit hotel room, something changed. Maya woke up from a dream, her eyes wide open, her heart pounding. Marcus rushed to her side. "What happened?" he asked, kneeling next to her. She clutched his hand. It was her, Sabrina. "In the dream, she said she was sorry, but then she tried to take the paper from me." Marcus held her close. "It was just a dream, but it didn't feel like a dream," she whispered. The next day, they returned to Atlanta. That night, Marcus took out the last envelope Clara had left behind. He never opened it, even after she died. Her handwriting was on the front, in case she asked about the darkness. He sat with Maya in the study, unfolded the letter, and began to read. Clara's words were measured, deliberate, but full of warmth. "Sweet girl, sometimes people hurt us not because they are monsters, but because they have forgotten that they are people. They forget how to listen or how to love, but your voice reminds them. Never be afraid to speak the truth, even if it makes the ground beneath your feet shake." Maya cried softly into his shoulder. Marcus said nothing. He just held her. And so chapter 7 of their story ended. Not with applause and headlines, but with a letter, a dream, and a promise from his father. That no matter how many people listened, he would always hear her first. A few weeks later, Marcus received an invitation that surprised him more than any other. It came not from the media, not from a nonprofit, but from the same law firm that had once tried to pressure him into finalizing a will with Sabrina in the room. The email was formal, crisp, with language that sidestepped responsibility, but it all came down to this. The partners wanted to meet Maya. "Why?" Marcus asked Louis, reading the email aloud over breakfast. "Because she scared the hell out of them," Louis said bluntly, sipping his coffee. "And maybe because they want a clear conscience." Maya looked up from her porridge. "Will they apologize?" I don't know, Marcus said. Would you want to go if they don't? She didn't answer right away. Then I want to see their eyes when I ask my question. What question? The one that's been stuck in my chest since the beginning, Mia said quietly. Why didn't anyone listen sooner? 2 days later, Marcus walked with Mia into the marble foyer of Dow Kerr and Bell. The same receptionist was there. She flinched when she saw them. The meeting was in a glass conference room. There were 5 senior partners, all white men in dark suits. One woman, straight-backed and wearing red lipstick. Maya, in her navy cardigan and white sneakers, looked impossibly small next to them, but she walked in like she belonged there. Marcus led the way. Thank you for coming, one of the partners began. We'd like to express... No, Maya cut him off, her voice calm. Not yet. Silence. She climbed onto the chair across from them, dangling her legs. You knew something was wrong that day. You saw me shaking. You saw my daddy looking confused. You saw her talking too fast. You all knew. None of the lawyers responded. Why didn't you say anything? The woman with the red lipstick cleared her throat. Ms. Williams, litigation is often... I'm 8. You don't have to say it so fancy. The silence thickened. One of the older men, Mr. Bell himself, finally folded his arms. You're right. We failed. We thought we were protecting the firm, but we forgot to protect the truth. That's why we asked you to come here. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a full audit of emails, call logs, even internal memos questioning Sabrina's sudden influence. Marcus read them all silently while Mia waited. We'll make this public, Mr. Bell added, and we'll resign. Mia blinked. All of you? Bell nodded. Marcus looked up, stunned. Why now? Because if a child can see what we haven't had the courage to name, Bell said, then maybe she deserves the right to help shape the world we leave behind. As they walked out of the building, Maya tugged on Marcus's arm. I feel light. That's what the truth does, Marcus said. Even when it's heavy, it sets you free. At home, the mailbox was overflowing. Letters from children, parents, judges. One from a retired social worker in Wisconsin who wrote, I wish I had your courage when I was your age. Another from a young woman in foster care. I thought no one would believe me, but now I know someone might. One letter stood out. It was handwritten in a rough but familiar cursive. Sabrina. Marcus stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Marcus, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I need you to know that I remember the night Maya spoke. I remember her eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw something I couldn't ignore. My own reflection in her disgust. I didn't go to rehab just for the pills, for the lies, for the hunger I chased with every trick and smile. You did the right thing by leaving. She did the right thing by speaking. If there's ever a chance to start over, I hope it starts with silence. Mine. S. Marcus folded the letter, tucked it back into the envelope, and put it in a drawer he rarely opened. Something, he whispered, don't need applause, just closure. That weekend, the Promise Club held its first statewide meeting. Families had come from all over Georgia. Maya stood under a large white tent, surrounded by children wearing matching t-shirts that read, Loud Hearts, Brave Words. She spoke without notes, just with her voice. My mother always said, the quiet ones are often the strongest, but I think the brave ones are the ones who learn to speak up when they need to, even if their voices shake. I didn't save Dad, we saved each other, and now we're helping save others. Applause, hugs, tears. Later that evening, Marcus found her on the porch, looking at the stars. Are you okay? He asked. She nodded. I think I finally believe. What? That everything that happened for a reason, so we could help. Marcus put an arm around her shoulder. You did more than help. You changed lives. She leaned into him. Promise me something. Anything when I grow up, and if I forget what it was like to be little, you'll remind me. He smiled. I promise. But something tells me you never will. As the dragonflies sang and the air grew cooler, father and daughter sat in silence. A good silence. Not the kind that's scary, but the kind where nothing needs to be said. Because the will had been rewritten, the truth had been heard, And where there had once been silence, love had taken its place. It had been 3 years since Maya had stood in that glass conference room and reminded a room full of lawyers of the sound of conscience. The memory still clung to Marcus like a song he would never forget, especially on mornings like these, when the house was quiet and the air smelled like fresh rain, and Maya's laughter would drift from the kitchen. She was 11 years old, taller, stronger, her curls even fuller. She no longer whispered her thoughts. She shared them fearlessly. She still called him Daddy. And Marcus still froze every time, not because he doubted it, but because he appreciated it. Maya, did you get the juice? He called. On the top shelf of the fridge behind your almond milk, she called back. Her voice was as confident as it had been since the day she'd warned him about Sabrina. And today wasn't just any day, it was the final hearing. The court was formally approving the educational foundation Marcus and Maya had co-founded, the Loud Hearts Initiative. It wasn't just a nonprofit, it was a promise made real. They partnered with schools all over Georgia. They offered legal literacy programs, workshops for kids in foster care, scholarships for kids the system had ignored. This was more than just paperwork, it was Maya's idea. She insisted on the name because brave hearts aren't always loud. She told the board members as much at their very first meeting. But when they're loud, someone has to listen. The downtown Atlanta courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back wall. Teachers and families sat shoulder to shoulder, many holding signs with the foundation's logo, a loud heart with wings. Maya wore a navy blazer over a white dress. She clutched a worn folder containing her speech. Marcus sat next to her, wearing a charcoal suit that felt tighter than he remembered. Are you nervous? He asked. A little, she admitted. But mostly I'm excited. Judge Erica Langston, a black woman with silver streaks in her hair and sharp eyes, walked into the courtroom and asked for silence. We are here to review the final articles of incorporation for the Loud Hearts Initiative, she said, leafing through the paperwork. Mr. Carter, Miss Williams, you have the floor. Maya stood up, her hands shaking slightly as she opened the folder. But when she began to speak, the courtroom fell silent. 3 years ago, I sat in a courtroom just like this one, she began. I was 8 years old and I was scared, and at first no one believed me. Not because they were bad people, but because I was small and quiet and black. A murmur ran through the crowd. She continued, I learned something that day, that sometimes adults forget how to listen to children, that laws protect power more than they protect people. But I also learned that the truth can speak louder than lies if someone is brave enough to say it. Her gaze swept the room. So this foundation is not about me. It is about a child who sees something wrong and speaks out anyway. It is about making sure the next Maya doesn't need a miracle to be believed. Her voice never wavered. When she finished, the applause was deafening. The judge's gavel rapped. The decision has been made, as she said, smiling. Let the record reflect that justice was served in this courtroom by a child. Reporters gathered outside. Marcus covered Mia with his arm, but she stepped forward, answering questions as if she'd been doing this her whole life. What's next? One reporter asked. More listening, Maya said. Kids, especially the quiet ones. The house was buzzing with celebration that night. Friends were coming over. Balloons, cake, laughter. Maya had disappeared, and Marcus found her sitting on a swing in the yard, looking at the stars. Hey, he said, handing her a piece of cake. That was brave. What did you say today? It was the right thing to do, she said, swinging her legs. But you know what's weird? What? I kept wondering, what if I hadn't said anything? What if I had let her touch the will? What if you hadn't believed me? Marcus sat down on the grass next to her. You said something. I believed you, and the world is a better place because of it. She leaned against his shoulder. I still don't understand why she was so eager to change her will. She already had you, Marcus sighed. Because some people only see love as a ladder, something to climb, not something to cherish. Maya was silent for a moment. Okay, she finally said. I'd rather cherish it. He smiled. Me too, baby. As the crickets chirped and the stars twinkled like distant eyes, Maya whispered, Do you think the other children will listen now? Marcus looked up at the sky, then back at her. I think they are already listening. More letters came in over the next few weeks, this time from schools offering partnerships, from lawyers offering pro bono work, from students sharing their stories. A small package arrived one morning. Inside was a faded stuffed rabbit. No note, just a stuffed animal. Maya gasped. "It's mine. I lost it when I was 6." Marcus turned the box over. A return address in Seattle. The name was Sabrina Holloway. They didn't say it out loud, but Maya picked up the rabbit, held it tenderly, and then set it on her nightstand. "Not all stories end badly," she said. Marcus nodded. "Some people just take longer to find their way home, and maybe this was the real testament. Not a document, not money, but a legacy. The courage to speak, the love to listen, and the quiet understanding that sometimes even the quietest voices can rewrite."